Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your mayor. I want to make a public statement to everybody, and especially to the RCMP. Abbotsford and myself are so grateful and thankful to the mission RCMP to protect me from drug trafficking, a frame job, and the attacks by the Abbotsford police, the constant beating down and everything. Them men put the wheels in motion. Abbotsford, myself especially, want to make sure that the world understands what the RCMP did for Abbotsford, the mission RCMP. Over the garbage of the Abbotsford police, how they pissed all over the Abbotsford police that were being run by an elite mob. They would never get caught because the leaders at the top could pull the other detachments to beef this detachment up. And no one knew behind the scenes that it was done. It was a mission RCMP that knew how to put it to the test by going to Ed Fast, Mike de Jong, and watching them what they did. When Mike said, cut a deal, Henry owns bloody Abbotsford. When he watched the elected MP, Ed Fast, and what Ed did, knowing he was covering for Henry. The rest was easy. These are the best at it. Darren Braun, Henry's own son, tipped it off. But the elites at the top could keep using the Abbotsford police through David Eby and everything, and now you can feel it, and keep it clean. If the RCMP would have came in on the attempted murder, and Mike Sear covering it, it would have caused the forensic opening of all the books of everybody and statements everywhere. It would have demanded that all Abbotsford police officers at the top now are kicked out. They can't run the town for the organization of the corruption. Keelan Olenoff, say drop a video in a lawsuit. It would have scandaled it, but it would have put the RCMP on top of Henry, on top of Ron Funk, on top of the insider trading and everything, and known that this was a mob lifting job sites, and it wasn't really about elected to be governing the city. It was a way they saw that that chair would enrichate themselves, and they were no longer the council or mayor, and they believed that if they worked together, they would outride the general community. They had Vicky Hopes writing the stories, and they had the little institutions cornered. Till Darren Brown opened it, and the best. No one would ever think that you would go to the RCMP. Mike Sear and his dumb officers, look at me, picking up prostitutes, racing the Dodge Chargers, no common sense. Debated that when you have evidence, you would have to walk in. Pulled the carpet right out from under them, and now they don't know. So what they would need now to save the company is they would need David Eby. And when David Eby starts to interfere, you know David Eby knows now that I know the $71 million in Barrowtown on Jakes and stuff like this. You were scamming off the BC taxpayers, and that is what you were dumping into the private police, because Henry assured you the private police could cover it. And this is why they held out the RCMP. This is why the RCMP, I believe, in my opinion, knew that the Abbotsford police were trying to run me out of town, beat me and everything. Wow, is she big. Leading investigators' wives will look at it, and they're going to know that these filthy men that are on duty covered these things and allowed this attempted murder, allowed this vicious attack on the community. Their own wives will turn on them, their neighbors will turn on them and everything. They're going to live the rest of their lives trying to swallow this down, and you'll never get at it. And that is why Peter Sparanese quit. You asked me the other day about Dave Sidhu's property, and most of a lot of you from 1BC. Well, Dallas Brody, I understand, is an attorney, so she would be able to fix this and find this fast. So let me tell you, Dave Sidhu is the sitting city council, and Ross is the mayor. They weren't in as mayor and council, they were in as business partners. They went in as business partners to enrichinate themselves because they won so many help with Henry giving them decisions. And they were lifting jobs and laughing in the community's favor, in their face. Upstairs already, Darren Braun, the economic development officer, showed how the decision was made months in advance, and when people went to complain, the city upstairs, this would be Rob Isaac, engineers, and that would say, it don't matter. If it goes before city audit term, it's not going to get stopped. The decision was made up top. That means the city top officials that were running the city, called bureaucrats, were being paid off. And that is why Peter Sparanese fled. So when it went to the city council, it meant nothing, because the decision three weeks ago was already confirmed that it's going to go. Dave Sidhu and the mayor, Ross Siemens, are partners. They're trying to distance themselves. They're trying to get away, which is disgusting of Ross to even do that. They're trying to load Amric Moran. They believe that if they get Amric, he's a lawyer. Mark Workington is a lawyer, and he knew better than to sit on this. And he sits there dumbfounded because Henry transformated him from the police board onto there, and he was in England, and he magically won. How do you think he won? How do you think Mark Workington won, council? How do you think he won, Abbotsford? Mark didn't show up to any events. Kelly Shahal is a probation officer, and she's governed by the law, and she knew better. And these are the stacked deck on Abbotsford. They don't know which way to go. They don't know what's coming down. They need to hold out the RCMP, so I want to clarify it. When the city goes for zoning on ALR land, and you own ALR land, you got to have the city clear it to Alana Papa, the little lady from the NDP. And they headhunted this piece of property for Dave Sidhu, knowing the city knew. Mark Workington knew that as a lawyer and a land titles lawyer, that this is Dave's. He never called it out. And this is why Peter Speranese got really scared, because he's the city manager. He swore on Henry's Bible, not our Bible. He swore on Henry and Ed's Bible, not your Bible, to take that oath. And he knew he was caught, so retirement. And under retirement, and if you're the elected mayor, you're supposed to come to an agreement that you won't go after him. Oh, I'll go after you. Oh, I'll go after you. I'll take everything that you had when you were that elected official, and I'll make an example of you that'll shock everybody. And I'm going to do that. I'm somebody that you don't want to play these games with after trying to cover an attempted murder, Mark. And Mark Workington knew this. And he knew it was Dave Sidhu's property. They knew that the city could then increase its carbon footprint from 21,000 to 60,000. They knew everything about it. But Vitalis is Vanderpool's. Let me explain. Vanderpool's is Vitalis. It got a corporate handout and welfare in order to buy Dave Sidhu's property when there's lots of industrial. If Vitalis got the 25 million from David Eby, they would have to go down in and buy industrial, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted to bring this egg processing here on ALR land so they could waive the taxes, because ag industrial is worth a lot of money and it pays them. So let me tell you something, what I clarified with the dozen eggs. Vanderpool's is a private company, and when you're a private company, the man who owns the company and the shareholders only stand to enriching themselves off of it. And that is why I told you corporate welfare, David Eby would be giving it, because he figures Vanderpool's are so big they can cover this stuff. And we won't. And then David Eby probably figured, in my opinion, if I was David Eby, I'd say, the Abbotsford police are only ones who can investigate, let's block it. And it's going to get out of control, you can see it. Eby won't even come into Abbotsford because he's so scared of what's coming up the doors. And he figures he's going to outrun this. You're not going to outrun this, nobody is. He doesn't got a chance in hell, like he told Donald Trump, to outrun what's coming. Because Henry's son told, and everybody's telling on each other out of jealousy. Dave Sidhu then was going to get the millions of dollars with Andy Sidhu, I showed you, in order for rigging the decision at the UFV and using a South Asian newspaper, and this is called payoff. Right, Dave? Payoff. Dave Sidhu doesn't want to go under fraud in investigations. They weren't counsel, let me tell you. They were partners. And when one stood to gain, they did. So Vanderpool's, being Vitalis, being a corporation, as a shareholder and as the CEO of the company, you stand to gain. Now, under this egg processing, under a corporate, under the ag and what they were bringing here for this, a cooperative. A cooperative is designed like a board. A cooperative is made up of all the farmers, and the farmers got say. And when you don't got say on this board as a say, and your vote counts and your say counts, now you got an independent person that owns it and stands to gain. And David Eby knew this. And then under this rule, Lana Pop-Up, she's in so much trouble, I think she's going to phone Pam and Pam's going to say, I quit, I distanced after my garbage. Lana Pop-Up knew all this, and she knew this, so that would mean she would have to go under criminal investigations, not by Colin Watson, not by Bob Rich and that garbage Mike Suri, but the best, the RCMP. And knew this. Under that ag and that cooperative, you all got saved. But they used that myth out there, Vitalis did, to do this and misled everybody in order to do this. But Ross Siemens set it all up. Ross set it up with Dave Sadu. And they set it up, and Mark Warkentine was instrumental of playing that, knowing he's a lawyer. And Kelly Shahal, she must know something about law, because I'm telling you, I knew it all when I worked for Peter Wall of Financial. You don't want to be doing this, you can lose your shit. But under the private police, me and Colin Watson are having a meeting with Amric Moran, and Amric Moran is going to take the message to Colin Watson and say, your shithole investigators don't know nothing. Do you see what Mr. Pelican said? Oh, let me tell you, my guy could speak to you about gangs. This is what the Abbotsford police were doing. This is why the Abbotsford police were ordered to shut my mouth under any circumstances and all circumstances, to shut Mr. Pelican's mouth on this insider trading. On not only this, on Henry's son. So now Vitalis did this, but then they went out and bought this land here of 5 acres that wasn't even ready to have it, and the neighbors didn't have say because it was greed. It was pure greed. Instead of Lana pop up now, because she's, I understand, her and the left hand of David Eby, the left hand of David Eby watched this video, and what they should have did is came in and put a big X on it. A big huge X, and said no go. No go. And if David Eby is clear of it, he would say, I'm ordering the RCMP to investigate Tracy Road immediately. The mislead of the BC's taxpayers' fund and how the city lobbied it with Ross Siemens and his partner Dave Sadu, and what Mark Warkentine did as the city. He's a city lawyer. He's a lawyer in the city. He owns Ed's Old All Practice, and remember that, Mark. Oh, this shit will get you, Mark. This shit will bury you. Every lawyer is telling me about it and said, how do you know it? I said, I knew from Peter Wall, and I knew from Mike Dakota and Ani and Tony Miguel. You don't want to play this game. Abbotsford Police, unless we charge Mark Warkentine, don't worry, there'll be no investigator. Colin Watson's working on his double gold badge. And this is what they were doing. And they did this to the farmers. Instead of this money going to the farmers, they saw a way to bleed it out. Now, Vitalis would have had to go out if he wanted to do it. It would have had to go out and buy its own property. And they didn't want to do that because they got to buy industrial land, and then they couldn't afford that. And then they couldn't use the money that they got, the 25 million plus the 5 million from Community Futures, to build it, because they would be out their own pocket and their own money. So they set it up to scam this and do it here. And they figured that David Eby was so big and Vitalis is so big, nothing will come on you. Really? I never saw this. The last time I saw a big fentanyl ring, I saw the RCMP take it down. And they thought they were like Henry Brown and David Eby and all these people. They were so big. And all of a sudden their shit got lost and they didn't know what to do. Henry Brown tried to end somebody's life in broad daylight. He used the top of Abbotsford's investigators and the top of Abbotsford Police. They figured they were above the law to cover that. That caused a massive spark and opened all the doors for me and my experience with every developer and everybody. I could bring it to you. Now, Vitalis has stood to gain with it. So Vitalis, the Vanderpoels, would have to back out of it to save the last bit of their reputation. And they're not. They're figuring that David Eby can manipulate this. When one BC sees it, and the BC Conservatives, they won't be arguing, Mr. Speaker. They won't be arguing. They'll be arguing that the David Eby has to now step down from the NDP because Barrowtown's missing and this is missing now. And Alana Papa did it, and immediately the RCMP investigate. Well, the RCMP don't need David Eby to tell you that, or David Eby to initiate it. They can initiate it themselves because it's using and abusing BC's taxpayers' fund. And why you do that is you take the taxpayers of BC's money in here and you say, give me some back. And when you're not standing clear of it and calling it out, you're getting it back. And they figure, well, if we could take it in cash or maybe remodel my kitchen or do a Funkstermeister job and doing this, it gets you and it gets you caught. But Abbotsford's not the type now to say, well, let him quit. That's why I said we're going to go out and why Peter Speranese quit. So Vitalis knew this. It used these leverages as a cooperative and misled this. It knew Dave Sadu's property, and it got it all help with Ross Siemens, everything. And Ross Siemens convinced everybody that if I rerun as mayor again and I do this, look at what Henry needs you. I told you, Ross, Henry needs you to finish this so you don't go to jail. You got to finish this. You got to finish it. Henry needs you up on the Vaquero Ranch for the Vaquero Ranch for Ron Funk. I told you. He needs you on Rob Funk Osage. I told you, the $500 million that he's going to move. He needs the big hole he was going to dig, the 1,000 acres. He's got a lot of plans, Ross. He needs you, and this is why they were loading Amric Moran, and it got obvious. I want to tell Abbotsford. I want to make this clear. Mr. Pelican didn't bring this. Henry Brown figured he was above the law with Ed Fast and Mike DeYoung. The Abbotsford elite and investigators forgot what they were sworn to uphold, and they became friends with Henry Brown in a ring establishment. Now they tried to distance themselves. I bet you Colin Watts on Monday morning will be choking, and he'll be choking, and he don't know what to do, because Colin Watts doesn't care. Colin Watts only cares about how can I hold my job for this last bit of money. This man ain't even a man, because I tell you right now, I started this knowing this with big developers. My first initiative was not to come into the city in forensic audit, but to bring the RCMP, because you need that much help. And this was the elite people of Abbotsford. It had Brad Viss involved, it had Ed Fast involved, and I showed you how Pierre Pauly had distanced himself from Ed and what they were doing. It had the elite envelopers that were getting preferential treatment and favors. It had Henry Point, his son, and you saw blue sky and everything. But Henry assured them they would never get caught. And Ross and these would never get caught, because the Abbotsford police can use their database, search where you were, and then send his guys out in the shadow of the night to beat you up. And I made it clear to the RCMP. I ain't shagging their dirty wives that they picked up them prostitutes down by Paviati's, and their wives could all be riddled now with HIV and everything, because they didn't go for testing when they were having their ways with the prostitutes in the company cars. I'm standing in front of the developers, and I'm using my experience and showing you insider trading. And Henry picked up the phone to his friends on the Abbotsford police like he did Olenoff. And when Olenoff said, Mr. Pelican, with all the witnesses, drop that fucking video and them lawsuits with the homeowners, and you settle with Henry, or I will personally bury you, using that Abbott's detachment. And I knew Mike Sear was in over his head, because right now, just like Colin Watts' guy, when he tried to frame me and I was in White Rock, Colin Watson, to pull his company out and do any due diligence, he should say, okay, I'm coming to talk to you, Mr. Pelican, we're going to White Rock. He believes his company and his guys are so big, and what they can share to the general public about crime and gangs, and the general public is like me, wondering if all of them are dying in the line of duty because of these dirty deals. So I want to tell Colin Watson, Dave Sidhu, didn't go into city as a public servant to be a counselor. He went in to enrichinate himself with Ross Siemens. And this is insider trading. And this is what led to threats. And then they headhunted his job. And then they used Vitalis, and they figured they would use big corporations that people couldn't defend or go against. Then they used the persona, and the persona of Vitalis did of this. And they then, not only that, of this, bringing this ag center here and all the chemicals, and not the Abbotsford residents, because EB was behind it with Alana Papa. He was fully behind it because he knew it's going to, and he's figuring that we're going to carry on rather than put a big X on it. And then to use this cooperative and mislead everybody, and that's what I showed you, the dozen eggs that cooperative has everybody. And if Vitalis is privately owned and the Vanderpoels own it, and it did this, now it expropriated wrongful funds out of the province taxpayers and misled everybody, and there is no cooperative. And if they don't got the 50% rule, which Ross knew should have been in play, that 50% rule, let me tell you, they have to have 50% of their own bloody chickens laying eggs. And if they don't got it, they got to go and buy from other farmers, and that means you got to create a cooperative. They didn't. They saw a way to scam the province taxpayers' money and pay Dave Sidhu and Andy Sidhu for what he did. And it got caught. The RCMP admission told me a long time back. Let me tell you what they said. Ross, I want you to hear it. They said they gotta pay Dave Sidhu back for blocking you in that South Asian newspaper. Ross needed them South Asians to look at him and nobody else. They gotta pay Greg Toes back for blocking you at the city auditorium. They gotta pay Sandy Blue back, and the RCMP were looking for that. And they got to pay Andy Sidhu back for taking that risk at UFV. And they looked for that. And they know it either comes in cash or perks. And here's how Ross was going to do it. For Henry Brown to shut his mouth, for Ross to take the city, right? And Mrs. Siemens will be telling you that because Jake Siemens sat with me and he knew this. But Ross never bet that anybody would go this far. Ross never ever thought that he would be in trouble. Ross thought he had great protection around. Ross was convinced that the Abbotsford police would do their damage for Henry. The Abbotsford police are fucking shit, let me tell you. And I can speak publicly and openly them harsh words, because my life was left for dead by a bunch of junk, complete junk, that used uniform to manipulate and lie. I wear this coat for my residents from the 2010 Olympics in proudness of everybody that came together and worked together. And with the help of the Mission RCMP, one by one by one, in we come. And I want to tell Colin Watson, Monday morning, you should go in and take the baseball bat to all your top detectives and say what's coming to you is unbloody forgivable. There is no going to be any proof of the RCMP coming in here and lifting it off of you or anybody. I'm going to block her every way so you get a spanking of your life. So no officer ever does another favor for a rich asshole like Henry Brown. And I would tell you, Colin Watson, you got Mark Workentine, a lawyer, you got Kelly Shahal, you got all these people, and you saw Peter Sparanese leave. And there's a rumor going around that Peter Sparanese sold me all this information. Well, you ask Peter Sparanese. And Peter Sparanese said, Mr. Pelican, don't mention my name, the rumor is, and I'll tell you everything. Lay off of me. Really? Really, I don't think so. Peter Sparanese's got to go for our courts. He was a city manager, and he swore an oath. I'm live, Abbotsford, British Columbia, Vanderpoels, Tracy Road.